Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Tanya Fernandez Anderson, the District 7 City Councilor. I am the chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Ways and Means. This working session is being recorded. This working session will be posted to the Boston City Council YouTube page and will be rebroadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, Files Channel 964. The Council's budget review process will encompass a series of public hearings beginning in April and running through June. We strongly encourage residents to take a moment to engage in this process by giving testimony for the record. If you would like to submit testimony following this working session, you can email written comments to the committee at ccc.wm@boston.gov. For more information on the City Council budget process and how to testify at any of the upcoming working sessions or hearing, rather, I hope there won't be any further hearings. Please visit the City Council's budget website at boston.gov/council-budget. Today's working session is on docket 0760, message in order for annual appropriation and tax order for FY24. Our focus area on this working session will be a discussion of proposed amendments for the FY24 budget. I am joined by my councilor colleagues, Councilor President Ed Flynn, Councilor at Large Aaron Murphy, District Councilor Baker, District Councilor Coletta, District Councilor Worrell, Councilor at Large Mejia, District Councilor Arroyo. For our format, this will be a very relaxed conversational style working session. I'd like to go over the amendment process, the charter amendment process with you, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer at this time. Then go straight into reading the proposed amendments on the floor, and at that point, taking comments by the order of arrival from each in terms of feedback. Some of the amendments seem pretty obvious need to community, but again, there are several of us with our own discretion on what the community has advocated for and what we feel our districts need and what the at-large councilors have heard from constituents as well and advocates. So it's important that we all have an opportunity to discuss our feedback or perspective on the amendments, and then it is to my discretion to put a report together. Just to review the process that we have already gone through last Wednesday during the council meeting. Essentially, we held, or I facilitated several working sessions, hearings, public testimonies, workshops or budget workshops for community, at least 3 of them, and then 2 in-community public testimony hearings. Then I held working sessions specific to departments. I also held working sessions specific to amendments. These working sessions and hearings were poorly attended. Those of you who showed up know exactly what I mean. Most of the time with only about 4 councilors attending. I realized that there was a whole lot going on. Some of us were being pulled in different directions with responsibilities to redistricting, with responsibilities to our district, a lot going on in the community as well. So I extended hopefully you'll agree with me, grace of putting all amendments on the floor to allow everyone the democratic privilege to be able to voice their what they advocated for in the amendment report. Then in the council meeting, some folks expressed that, Council Flaherty expressed that there was too much of a cut to BPD. And so the budget actually passed with 8 votes and 4 of our councilors who did not vote for it. Councilor Baker, Councilor Murphy, Councilor Flaherty, and Councilor Flynn did not vote for the budget. At some point, I had a previous commitment that I had to exit the council meeting to. I left to go to something else that I was scheduled for, and there was communications from IGR, from the administration, with councilors that eventually led to Councilor Coletta rescinding on her vote, and Councilor Worrell also rescinding on his vote, but voting present or changing the status on their votes. That then led to not having a majority vote on the budget, so it did not pass. It remained in committee. What has to happen now is that we have to hold this working session today and tomorrow, discuss the amendments, express what we care about, what we don't, make sense of the pools and the additions in the budget or from different departments, and hopefully come to a consensus. We don't necessarily all have to agree. What will happen is we need 7 votes to pass the budget on Wednesday. And for lack of better words, on Wednesday, it is do or die. If we do not pass the budget, the mayor's budget goes into effect. There is no 112. It goes into effect. And so I recommend for my councilors to really invest in this time today and tomorrow for us to be able to figure out some report or of the amendments to hopefully pass on Wednesday. I'm also inviting the administration or anyone, members of IGR, if they have any questions, if they're going to approach councilors, that they give me the courtesy as a chair to at least and give me the information that they're giving. I've asked my councilors also to give me the courtesy to ask me exactly what the protocols, if they're unclear, so that I may clarify before making last minute changes without me being present. I would like the opportunity to at least have a discussion with you, especially for those of you who have not had the opportunity to show up to all hearings and working sessions. Without further ado, I will give the floor in the order of arrival to my council colleagues for their comments. As you know by now, I am doing the best possible, God willing, to be as transparent as possible in my politics, in my policy, in my delivery, so that the public is fully aware of processes, of understanding these policies and protocols so that they can navigate these systems and advocate for themselves so that we return the power to the people, hopefully. Councilor Flynn, I'm allowing just 30 seconds for opening statements. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your leadership. And I wanted to highlight 2 things, Madam Chair, is I was seeking, like I had in the past, $290,000 for the Worker Safety Initiative under Labor Compliance and Worker Protection. But I also was going to add one other point, is a $25,000 increase to the Family Justice Center out in Alston and Brighton area, which would provide the personnel there the opportunity for training and to go to various conferences, professional development. It's critical when you're in that field to learn about trends in domestic violence and child abuse, sexual assault. So I'm asking for $25,000 for the Family Justice Center. No further comment or no further questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Council President Flynn. Councilor Murphy, 30 seconds.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just happy to be here to go through the amendments and hoping that we can have a conversation. I think we all agreed last week that most of us, if not all of us, think each of these amendments that came forward are valid and would be good to see if they're not already funded, but how do we sustain them? This isn't an ARPA conversation that we did go through last year where we knew it was once in a, that what happens next year, what happens the year after in our budget? Are these things that can continue to be sustained? So looking forward to this conversation and getting to an agreement. So we're ready for Wednesday. Thank you.
Councilor Coletta?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank you for your leadership during this process. You've been extremely diligent, and you have held working sessions ahead of the vote. I'm happy that we have a full participation here, or almost full participation, so that we can discuss these line items, and I think that's what I've been looking for. But I do understand that it's our fiduciary responsibility to protect vital city services and programming, existing and future employees, and the fiscal health of the City of Boston. I ultimately voted no last week because in review of the committee report, I felt like I wasn't upholding a majority of what I just mentioned. There were substantial cuts to city employees and personnel, close to $25 million, and without the police department budget, $9 million of permanent or contracted employees. And so as we're growing as a city, we need to understand that human impact, that very real impact on city services. And my issue, again, is not around the contents of these proposals, but more so the amounts. I think it's unrealistic to put forth some of these amounts without acknowledging, again, the real and serious implications of city services. So I am happy to hear that we'll be going line by line, having this discussion, understanding the impacts, and then figuring out, because we do ultimately need 7 tomorrow, so that we do not default back to the mayor's budget,
Wednesday.
if we can go around and figure out if each amendment has the support of 7 councilors. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Coletta. For clarification, there was no cuts to any permanent employees. There were cuts to monies that either were unspent or monies that were projected to increase in program or employees. The challenge that we have is we have to make decisions about what is priority. And some departments have expressed in hearings that they were having a difficult time with building capacity, increasing staff. And so in the amendments, you have to find the money somewhere. It's moving of funds, and so it's deciding what is your priority. And then the second part of that clarification is that, again, I want to be very clear that I did not use bias, I did not take sides, nor did I make a choice in terms of which amendments I would put on the floor. For the record, again, I made sure that I put every single amendment that people proposed. I didn't reject one on purpose, because we were all going to come in this chamber and be transparent about what we stand for, about what we're speaking about in terms of what our priorities are. And so I'm just choosing to do that because I know that half of us were not here, not as a rebuttal, but just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, because as the attendance increases, I will catch everybody to date. And then Councilor Coletta mentioned tomorrow the vote is on Wednesday. We'll have a discussion. Did you want to respond to what I'm saying?
I would love that, and thank you for the opportunity. So just in conversation with various folks, I mean, there is always built-in salary savings in the city departments. There are vacancies in the city as well, too. We know that. But I think there was an assumption that we would not fill these vacancies or that we would be at the same level as next year. And so, and we know that there's going to be turnover. So that way we have more money when it comes to personnel. But to cover the $9 million worth of cuts, I'm not sure that it necessarily was there. I'm happy to review the details and talk through it.
Yeah, let's talk about it when we get to that. That's also inaccurate because So the intention was, for example, counselors will give me, and I want to finish my format as of what we were doing, but counselors will give me, for example, say you wanted to cut from a department, another counselor wanted to cut from that department. I would then send them back a recommendation. We can't do that because, say, Council Coletta already is pulling, and the math that I asked our budget analyst to stick to is don't go over what people need for fiscal year, for the previous fiscal year, which would allow them to finish everyone for fiscal year 23, and then leave them room to build capacity. So that's also inaccurate. But we can go through the numbers and we can look at it one by one, and I'm very excited to be here with you guys because finally we get to get into the micro level of things that I really wanted to originally get into. And I thank you, Councilor Coletta, and well, Councilor Worrell, who was always here for working sessions, and Councilor Mejia, really appreciate you, and Councilor Flynn. Councilor Baker, you have 30 seconds for your introduction.
I'm good, Madam Chair.
Councilor Worrell?
Thank you, Councilor Anderson, and thank you for your leadership and just looking to get to work. I love the idea that we're now going to be putting the amendments forward and seeing who supports so that we could come to a decision on Wednesday. So thank you for your leadership and just looking to get to work.
Councilor Mejia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. With 30 seconds, I would just like to thank you again for shepherding us through this very difficult process, right? There's always so many things at play when we're trying to move in the direction that uplifts the people. And so that is always a tension point. I will just like to note for the record that I attended a civic meeting last week for the Reparations Task Force, and I was really disheartened to hear that investments had not been made to ensure that the Reparations Task Force that you, Councilor Worrell, and myself worked really hard to establish. And during this process, I'd like to bring up that conversation and make some amendment recommendations to help support their work. So that's one of the things that I'm going to be adding to the conversation based on the feedback that we received last week. And I am going to stick to understanding that there are some things that community has asked for, and I am going to manage my expectations on some of the other things that I've asked for, because this is about compromise, and I know that not everyone's going to get what they want. So I'm going to be open to managing my own expectations, but not watering down the expectations of those who I serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. You bring up a good point. We will be making, if you have any other amendments to put on the floor, I'm happy to accept them today or tomorrow, but no later than the working session tomorrow. Councilor Arroyo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing really, just that I think I only have 2 amendments in here. They're going to be a total allocation of $1,240,000. And so I guess we can do whatever the format you're going to do. I'm just going to follow that in terms of how things get presented, how we move. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Flaherty, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just urging colleagues to be realistic and to manage constituents' expectations. We all get pulled in 1,000 directions. There's a whole list here of amendments, clearly in a perfect scenario, make terrific sense, provided we didn't have to pull from other departments and other areas. So just asking if we all came forward with, say, 20 or $25 million dollars of amendments, that would be somewhere north of $300 million. It's just not reasonable to expect that. So we also have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayer and a bond rating we should be worried about as well. So I look forward to the dialogue. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilor Lujan?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for helping us steward this process. I think a lot of these amendments are noble amendments. My amendments we're very careful not pulling from personnel. I think for the reasons that were laid out, pulling from personnel can be somewhat tricky, especially we are trying to hire staff in a lot of departments to do the work of the city. But I support a lot of the amendments that my councilors are trying to make. Just, we got to look at the opposite end to see where the money is coming from, and look forward to the work. Thank you.
Thank you. You all should have a copy of the list of the amendments. Everyone has a copy? Fantastic. The list starts with the amendments that I proposed, and I've highlighted what I think are priorities to return, making the rest secondary, only because I know that this is a give and take type of process. So I've chosen a selected few that I feel are priorities for me, and we can again we can review where the funds are coming from right here. And so Karishma, our budget analyst, through me, if you have any questions about specifics, where the money's coming from, how much money was left over, how much money was originally over the budget, or what was for fiscal year 23, whatever questions you have, ask me, and we can get it from Karishma if I'm not able to manage this spreadsheet fast enough. And so we'll start with the business corridor action plan. And I was proposing that the funds go to OEOI for contractual services, specifically to support with contracts or grants to small business corridors to revitalize our business corridors. And the pull, or the department pull, would be from Boston Transportation Department, from contractor services for 1.9 million, and 100,000 from budget management. Feel free to light your mic if you have any questions, or I'll keep going. The second thing that I've taken, made priority is for cultural spaces, 1.9 million for cultural spaces to be taken from 100,000 from human resources, 100,000 from library department current charges, human resources, transportation, library department, 100,000 library department current charges, 700,000 law department permanent employee, 1 million from B2D contractual services. Councilor Coletta?
Thank you so much, Chair. As the Chair of Arts and Culture, I really appreciate this amendment, and I appreciate the intention. This is one of those instances where it does pull from. I'm looking at the law department, about $700,000. And then seeing that this is a noble, again, a noble and worthy cause, we do have the Cultural Space Fund out of MOAC that is funded at $1.335 million right now. And so I'm wondering, what is the difference between that fund and then what this fund hopes to achieve?
Well, it's just not enough. Being the chair, you understand, I'm an artist myself and used to produce theater productions. And I know that a lot of artists have lost their spaces, working space, livable spaces, as well as just performance space. We had a hearing, you chaired, and after talking to advocates and people that are still in dire need, it would seem that a lot of the issues addressed few folks in, what was it? Is it Charlestown and Fenway and some of North End and some of South End, but it did not address folks that are suffering from the same issue in Dorchester, Mattapan, and Roxbury. I did speak with the, again, the advocates, but also the organizations that are working to do this. The funds that were moved to that program helped tremendously, but they could definitely use more money. Now, where it's coming from, obviously, is the contention here. In terms of 700,000, again, I pulled because I felt like the law department if they're increasing in staff, I didn't see the reasonable cause, and I made a choice of moving that money.
And I do think that it does need more money. I am willing to support this amendment as long as it's not coming from personnel. And I also just want to flag too that there is another amendment from Council Lara, $1.4 million going directly into this fund again. So that's an additional, I don't even know, 1.9 plus $1.4 million going into this fund. So I'm just wondering if
2.3?
we, yeah, so
So-
if we can partially fund it, coming from Human Resources Transportation, and some other things that you have, Law Department, current charges, transportation contractual services, all of that.
Thank you. I am going to highlight this in terms of the Law Department permanent, and we can come back to it.
Thank you, Chair.
No problem. Now, as far as, yes, sir. As far as Council Lara's, so there was like some minor confusion. She mentioned that it wasn't the same. It was going, this particular program was the space program. It was going to OEOI. And I think after verifying it, which was like after, she realized that it did live in arts and culture. And so we essentially have the same idea. So we're adding and cutting it in half. And I'll come back to you with that amount.
Okay, thank you,
Okay.
Chair.
No problem. Councilor Vice Chair Worrell.
Thank you, Chair. And I do love the idea. I guess one of my other concerns is I hear from a lot of residents regarding whether they want more crosswalks, more speed humps, and the pull from contracted services for $1 million in the RFI that they sent us was explanation for the increase was increase in pavement markings. So would want to see if you will be willing to maybe manage that decrease of contracted services in this poll.
Thank you, Councilor Worrell. Yes, absolutely. So some progress is better than none, right? I'll come back to that. I've taken the note, and we'll come back to that and see what makes sense. Next, technical employee. So basically, Ethan needs an assistant in general, but he also, and this assistant would also like provide some of that technical assistance to update our websites. Our web pages on the city's website. And so Ethan needs an FTE period to assist him. And then the dollars here obviously doesn't equal the salary. It's all incorporated, all other contingent amounts incorporated. I guess, does anyone have any feedback on this one, where it's coming from? Councilor Flaherty?
Chair, just a general question, not on this issue, but I guess the question I have is, in obviously the interest of time, since Wednesday, have our colleagues taken a look at their amendments, and have they sort of refocused and sharpened their pencil, if you will, so that if they've taken them off the book? So for example, if there's a council that has, from Wednesday's sheet.
Has anyone proposed any changes or compromises or amended the amendment?
Exactly, because last Wednesday we had $75 million in amendments. So if we're going to sit here and go through 75 million, it's like, we've already kind of done that. That did not pass last Wednesday. My hope was that since Wednesday.
But did we do that really, though?
Well, it failed on passage. And so my question, I guess, is, should we be going through that exercise, or would time be better spent if councilors were able to sort of sharpen their focus and put forth, I guess, what I would consider to be more realistic amendments, so that we as a council can use our collective strength and leverage that, as opposed to just going through line item by line item of all the amendments. I'm here over 20 years. I've never seen one member, let alone a whole council, get millions and millions and millions added through amendments. So I want to save us the trouble.
That's because it didn't exist before.
Well, the budget exists every year, and we've got a balanced budget.
Oh, you
We've
meant
got
the
a great
backdoor
plan.
deals that were not transparent?
No, just the negotiations between members of the city council.
Council Flaherty, unfortunately, I hear what you're saying. So if I, for example, if I take this and I prioritize just to talk about what you want to talk about, because those are the priorities for you, then what about everybody else and what their priorities are? I'm not going to be able to actually triage whose priority should go first or what we should talk about first. Instead, I'm going through a list because one propels into the other. We cannot talk about the budget without looking at the entire list, because maybe I'm cutting something that Lou Jean proposed and I'm adding something that I proposed. Maybe it's the other way around. I won't know that unless we talk about it. We have to go through it. I have to start chopping this up one by one. If you want me to do this by myself and save time for the council, I would do that. You may not like that result. The point of building consensus here is supposed to do it together.
Little same but different. My focus is, my suggestion would be that individual councils would have been able to withdraw some of theirs to cut that list down for you to chop up, as opposed to throwing the 75 million on the table, which is what we're doing now. We're supporting your effort to chop it up, but it would have been an easier process and we would have saved more time if folks came in with some things already off the table based on last Wednesday to make your job a little bit easier. And so instead, we're going to go through 75 million of amendments, right, and you're going to chop them up, versus starting today's session maybe at, say, 25 million, and then we work from that. So just trying to make a suggestion that would be in the interest of time, instead of going through all 75 million, if individual colleagues would have came to the table to withdraw some of that, some of those amendments that are not realistic in this budget, and then give you a starting point, a stepping off point. Instead of it being 75 million, maybe the stepping off point is at 25 million. It was really a friendly suggestion.
Your tone is always friendly, yes.
Based on experience.
The underlining definition of what you say, though, is not. I'm saying to you that I could cut it down, and that if easier is what you're saying the objective is, or being time conducive, that is not guaranteed, because I could cut it down, I can come here in front of the body, and folks would have disagreement no matter what happened to my stuff, or I didn't want to do that, I wanted to do this. And believe you me, this 75 million that I've gone through night after night after night with Karishma is not easy. I agree with you. I don't know if that's the best process, because it excludes people's priorities. I want to hear what people's priorities are. If you want me to skip mine, because I started with mine, and get right to the people that are present, that's okay too. But again, it's supposed to be a cohesive process. We're not going to be able to do that unless we look at all of the departments and what hits they're taking, so that we can make sense out of each amendment. I don't want to make that decision alone. I have that power. I can do that. But if I do that, I might have to exclude you, or I might have to exclude someone else. And I have to be patient, even if this does take 3 hours. I have to go through it. I hope you can take that as a friendly response.
Yep, I think it would be better for you as the chair if colleagues were more responsive to that. So for example, if car 5's not realistic, I should be taking car 5 off of the list. Makes your job easier, makes our job easier.
Would you like to take a
We get to
break
yes.
and suggest for everyone to see if we get a consensus on your idea? We could take a break and everyone can come back with their amendments chopped down?
I think so. I mean, I think if we're going to be here in good faith, Madam Chair, good faith, and we really need to understand what's realistic in our amendments and what's not realistic.
Who
And
is
if-
to say,
And if there are
though-
things that are not realistic, then we need to put pen to paper on what is realistic, so that we're not wasting all of our time as well as the public's time in going through this process. We could go through the painstaking process of 75 million, line item by line item by line item. That's fine. We already know the reality of that no mayor's going to sign that budget that's coming over with 75 million amendment, and no colleagues of mine, or at least I know I can't support cutting the Boston Police Department for $42.5 million. It's just not realistic. let's get to a realistic point. So if our colleagues have done some homework over the weekend and looked at their budget amendments and identified which ones, geez, not realistic, maybe I can get that one next year, or geez, that's a little heavy, maybe I can cut that a little here. Like if we haven't done that over the weekend, it's been a disservice to this process, but also to you as the chair. So I'm trying to help
I've been going
this
through that
process.
for the last 2 months, and I don't complain
I know you
about
have,
it.
yep, no, I know that. And that's your job as chair.
I rather us now make the best use of this time. I guarantee you this, at least 1 or 2 people that disagree with you. In order for me to chair and facilitate the process fairly, I have to allow everyone to have that voice. Your voice happens to be that we should chop it down. Someone else thinks that we shouldn't. And it's not for the mayor to just, it's not for us to just do exactly what the mayor is expecting or want. It's for us to do the amendment process and try to come to some sort of vote. I understand what you're saying. I've taken all of your points. I'm happy to ask my colleagues if they want to come back in about 20 minutes and chop down some of this list. If folks don't agree, if the majority don't agree here, we're going to keep going.
And thank you, Madam Chair, and that would make sense. Other than that, we're just going to have the same 75 that we had last Wednesday for this Wednesday. And we really haven't made any progress if folks haven't done the deep dive and sharpened their pencils, that's all. So I appreciate that. If it requires a brief recess and folks can have
It
an
also
earnest look.
requires that you hold yourself accountable to it first.
So, yeah, I mean,
Tell me your list.
Yeah,
Tell me the
Car 5's
list.
probably coming out. It's pretty
Yeah,
modest.
yeah, yeah. Tell me your list that you think is unrealistic. We'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, Car 5, it doesn't, my sense is from conversations, it doesn't look like it's going to happen, but a lot of other stuff, it's looks like it could happen. And some of the stuff is also supported by some of our other colleagues in terms of increase in Hokies and increase in inspectors, particularly the increase for motor vehicle operators over the Parks Department. So if my one big ticket item has to come off for the sake of all of us getting something out of this budget, team player, sign me up. But I'm not going to come in and dump $20 million of unrealistic amendments on your plate and then not walk some of them back and manage expectations of the public, arguably playing to the cheap seats and giving this expectation that people are going to get something out of this budget that's just not realistic. So
Maybe we should start with,
trying to deal from reality.
Are you willing to take anything from the police department at all?
Negative. I would take 1.5, I'll take Car 5 off my list. How's that? So I'll start.
Is that a 0 from police department?
No, that's 1.5.
I think we're not.
1.5 coming out of fire for Car 5.
But you are not willing to take anything out of the police department?
Negative. Public safety is of paramount importance for the success of our city.
I hope you're okay with me moving on with the process.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to give feedback in terms of the process that Councilor Flaherty suggested? Councilor Baker?
Yeah, just another suggestion. We, over the past year and a half, have approved somewhere in the range of 500 to 600 million in housing, and yet there's still loads of housing here. I think that should, and again, just making a suggestion similar to what my colleague had. I think that the 600 million in housing dollars, we should see what the administration, how they're gonna use it, how they're gonna spend it, and work within our guidelines to have them build projects or things like that with the money that we've already approved for them. There's certain things in here that call for more vouchers, and more vouchers are needed, but that's also something that if it's 5 million this year, it's 6 million next year, it's 7 million the year after, so that's a graduated thing. This whole process concerns me, but I'll leave that at the table.
The amendment process?
The whole going in and being in the city for 30 plus years and knowing the departments and knowing how the department heads fight for their departments, I'm just a little uncomfortable going in and cutting up departments. Whether if it's police, whether if it's, I mean, Public Works, I keep seeing on here, Public Works needs more public, that's where our speed bumps and all of that.
I take it you didn't vote for the charter amendment?
What?
You didn't vote for the charter amendment?
Oh, I know I didn't, because I don't.
I didn't know.
No, I did not vote for that charter amendment because I don't think it's a good process. I think it takes our finances in the city of Boston, and I'm a taxpayer nearly my whole life. It takes those finances, just throws them up in the air. I don't think it's. I think it can be problems, especially down the line. Not this year, not last year, maybe not even next year. 5, 6, 7 years. I think it can absolutely be problems. So that's just a thought. I only have one amendment, I think, and it was for the security guards. It was interdepartmental. It was taking from overtime, which I believe if we hired more security guards and paid the security guards what they should be getting.
That was really intuitive.
It was what?
Intuitive. It was smart. It was productive. It was like it made sense.
And I think that
And it sends a
there's-
message.
there is value in some of the stuff here, but going after 75 million and saying that personnel will not be affected, personnel is absolutely going to be affected. And even if we're not cutting directly from a personnel here, you take monies from departments, personnel will be affected. Absolutely 100%. Again, maybe not this year, maybe not this budget, next year. I mean, next year's budget already, the ARPA money be gone, our tax rolls potentially going to be lighter than they are this year. So next year, something that we haven't had I've been here 12 years, in the last 10 years, my first questions were always, how many layoffs this year? I haven't asked that question in probably 9 years. Next year, that question, somebody's going to need to ask that question next year, because next year there's definitely going to be layoffs. And I just think 75 is a lot, but, who am I? Thank you.
Thank you, Council Baker. For the record, there will be no layoff. We understand the legal parameters on this. We're not cutting monies that will not ensure that people keep their jobs. And I made sure of that with the calculations. Councilor Mejia?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say that this is a difficult process. I always feel like this is the Hunger Games and everybody's like fending for themselves, and I understand that it's hard for us to reach a compromise, and I just want to note that. And I also want to note that we are going to have to make some difficult compromises here if we're going to get to a place where everybody feels like they've gotten something and they've lost something, right? So let's just if anything that we have learned in working together as a body is that not everyone's going to get what they want. And we have to be okay with that. And I know that that's difficult because we have people who put us in these positions to fight for things, and they expect us to do that and be unapologetic about those things. So we have to continue to show up in that way. So I'm willing to make some compromises, and to Councilor Flaherty's point, I did give some thought to some of the things where I feel like I can compromise in a way that doesn't water down the work, right? I think it's really important for us to be mindful that we have been given this alleged power to be able to advocate for what we believe the city needs, because we are responsible for the city as a whole, and we represent our district constituents, and our constituents are calling us about X, Y, and Z. So it's not like we're just making things up. Like, this information has come from a place of being in deep community with those that we serve, right? Councilor Ladd, I'm gonna let you go talk, so that way you don't have to stand there. I know what it's like to, sorry.
Before you go on, Councilor Mejia, I have not allowed for this process that's happening right now. And so if we're going to do that, let's take some sort of, raised hand, what you guys want to do. If the majority of you want to step away and start chopping away at or cutting away some of your amendments, then let's, by show of hands, if we have a majority, then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back in here and we'll do that process. That process is not on the floor. That's not what we're doing right now.
And I'm not going into my amendments. I'm just letting you know that I'm open to it if we go there. So I was just speaking that out loud, that I have been reflective, but I'm not saying that I'm going to go through the list right now. I'm just saying that I want to make sure that I'm showing up in a way that helps people understand that I'm here to do the work, and I'm here for that work. And if I'm going to make those compromises that are going to make some people feel uncomfortable, right? But at the end of the day, we have to manage everybody's expectations, including those who put us in office, right? Because asking for 40 million for PB and then going down to 20 and understanding that the administration is not going to be there, then we're going to have to make some compromises in terms of what that bottom line number looks like, right? And those are the sort of things that we're going to have to do to grapple with what this moment calls for. But what I won't do, right? What I won't do is sit behind these sidelines and just shrug my shoulders and say, we tried. Because if we really didn't try to fight for the things that we all know is what this moment calls for, then it's just political theater. And I don't want to be an actor in that play. The people that put us here
Except
deserve
the
more than that.
process. Sorry.
The process has never worked. No, the process
I
has never
haven't
worked.
said anything.
Yeah.
Are you
No,
all set?
No, the last thing that I'll say is that this is my 4th budget. The first one, I didn't even know we were negotiating behind the scenes. The whole process is undemocratic, and it is disgusting. And so if this is an opportunity for us to be transparent and show up for people so that people know who we really are, then I want to go through this process publicly and fight for the things that I want publicly. So I appreciate you creating that space for us to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Mejia. So just once again, Councilor Lujan, I see your mic. Once again, the process is that we take a vote in order for it to pass so that it can go to the mayor's desk. And the mayor then has 1 week to review the budget with the amendments from the council, to return it to the council, and then we're allowed an additional 1 week to review in order for us to decide whether to override or to override in part or to override in whole or to or that we don't have enough votes to override. And then the mayor's budget with the recommendation that she returns or no recommendation or just a veto passes if we don't get enough votes to do that. And so this is just, we all understand that this is just the first process. On Wednesday, when we passed it at first and then 2 councilors changed their position on their votes, it did not officially pass the budget. All it did, it passed it to go to the mayor's office for her review and to veto or to veto with suggestions. She could veto it with no suggestions. She can veto it with suggestions. Last year, when we made amendments, the mayor then found that she got funds from the state of $10 million or a little over $10 million. And then she used those $10 million to make certain recommendations to accommodate the amendments that we had suggested. And so the administration has also communicated that that will be the same this year, a little bit more than 10 million this time. And so it's not that 75 million would not just be 75 million. It would not remain that way. Most likely, if we're using logic, it would not remain that way. She would have to return it with, no, I do not accept this. Yes, this is fine. And then we would review it before we passed or override her veto. Councilor Lujan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you know how much we passed in amendments last year?
17 million.
Okay. So to Councilor Flaherty's point, willing to either via recess or now make the changes to amendments to whittle that down. I also think, like, a suggestion to the chair, not sure if this is feasible, but should there be a limit, or should we try to cap what request is coming from individual councilors? Some of them are like one councilor is offering it, but it's having a lot of support. So Councilor Flaherty put in for CAR 5, for example. I put in for CAR 5 as well. Councilor Flaherty is taking the lead on that and has withdrawn that. I'm not going to then say, no, CAR 5 must remain in, although I too would like to see CAR 5. That's something that's withdrawn. So I'm just wondering if that would make the process easier, seeing that if we, last year we did $17 million, we're talking about a lot more that's being offered here, if that would make it easier if we sort of gave everyone some sort of structure to work within, just an idea. But also willing to take a recess or to do it now regarding cuts to our proposed amendments.
Thank you. Counselor Arroyo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to, in terms of the process, which I think you eloquently spelled out in terms of the fact that this is a process of steps, one of the reasons why I would sort of say it might be not productive to sit here and try to vote as a group on every single amendment is that we did that last budget, and then when the mayor vetoed them, it didn't mean anything. And so what's the point of having a vote about whether we initially support it if even a vote to initially support an amendment on a mayor's veto doesn't mean that they're guaranteeing a vote for an override of that amendment? And so at that point, you may as well just send it to the mayor and see if that individual amendment makes it past the mayor to whatever's next, rather than try to say, okay, well, 6 of us would vote for it now, or 9 of us would vote for it now, or whatever number would vote for it now, but then it gets vetoed and then it doesn't matter. And so
Right.
at that point, you may as well just send them up together. I think the only thing I would ask is that all of the cuts and additions make sense. In other words, if I add $1.5 million to one department, but then you take $1.5 million out of that same department somewhere else and put it somewhere else, then that wouldn't necessarily make sense. So we would just want to make sense that the books add up, but I don't know that it makes sense for people to weigh in on every single individual amendment, because at the end of the day, you're voting on this as a total package. And we did this last time, and I think every amendment went up nearly universally, or at least with a majority for, in terms of what it would take for a supermajority to pass it. And then when it came back with vetoes, it didn't mean anything. They basically voted against overriding those vetoes. And so I think at the end of the day, what's the point of that if it's not going to amount to an actual vote for it where it matters? Because we are early in the process. So as long as the finances make sense, in other words, I think I heard folks put money into one department and then that money was taken out from other amendments. And so at the end of the day, that department had like less money than what they were trying to put in. So as long as that
Or the
makes
same.
sense, or the same, I think that part of it makes a lot of sense to me, to make sure that the books sort of, that if I'm putting money in, that they're actually getting more money, if that makes sense.
Yeah, not really, because, for example, it's about prioritizing policy or programs that we, the counselors, are advocating or prioritizing. So, for example, even if you are moving funds specifically, it's about creating line items. And whether that overall department's budget remains the same or takes a $100,000 decrease, it doesn't matter. It's about prioritizing our line items. And so if you move and you add program A and Worrell removes money to add program B, it doesn't matter. It's about the line item overall being prioritized. That's one thing. And the other part is, I specifically started this process by decreasing my amendments into half. I can't tell my council colleagues exactly what to do or whether or not you, Council Flaherty, did your homework, because you have only 3 or 4 amendments in there. So it's easy to just be like, okay, this one, I'll chop this one. And so if you want to only speak on your amendments, Council Flaherty started by interjecting when I was presenting my priorities. If I had 20, I was only going to present about 7, and I stated that. You then interjected and repeated exactly what I was doing. So I'm just saying, can we move on with the process? If you're not ready with what you're going to list today, then you feel free to step away. This process is transparent. It's here. If you don't want to talk about it on mic, you have that choice. Other than that, I can go to those who remain, who are ready to present what they're ready to chop off or what they're ready to present in front of us.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're talking to me about.
No, I'm talking about clarifying what Flaherty was saying, because you.
Oh, okay, because I only have 2 amendments, and so I don't think it doesn't, I've already said them. I'm happy to say them. So I don't know. I'm just going to follow whatever process you put forward. I'm just here to do whatever order you're doing it. But I just think it makes sense to do it that way rather than to make this take a long time with hands up, hands down, hands up, hands down. I think some folks just, within reason, should be trying to come to an agreement.
I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. I am here doing this process. I haven't even had the opportunity to go through it. We don't know how long it's gonna take. And it's already like, oh, it's taken too long, and it only took first 10 minutes. So what what I'm saying is chop down your list to half, whatever your priorities are. Let me finish with my process and allow me to chair this thing. Allow me to go through my list. I did say, I'm not gonna talk about all of them. I've prioritized only what I think are priorities for me. I've chopped down my list in half, and then Council Flaherty literally went and repeated the same thing I was saying. So I'm saying now, can we move on with the process and not continue to go back and forth on it? If you have, I think that asking for people to raise hands at recess, only Councilor Lujan mentioned that she thought that was a good idea, and I think you're saying the same thing. It's time consuming, and I'm saying to you, you know what? Feel free to step outside and cut down your list to half. If you're ready to present what's priority to you, I will call on you and we'll keep it moving. Okay, great. If by your mics being lit, I guess I'm not going to finish my list, and I will go to you, and you guys can present, and that way you can leave as soon as you're done. But we can't do a working session unless we're discussing collectively how to make this work. So do folks have a hard stop? We're here, it's scheduled to 5 or till 6 if we need it. Okay, Councilor Mejia, are you ready to present your priorities?
I have a quick question, Chair. Sorry.
Yeah, it was,
So it would be helpful to me, right? I know that we're asking that the proposal was for 20 million for participatory budget, and I am curious, and it would be helpful for me because I know not all of my colleagues are super enthusiastic about the PB situation here, but I would love to manage my expectations and having a good understanding of what people will consider a feasible compromise, recognizing that this was an amendment that was passed, right? That there is a process that has been put in place, that there is an expectation that community does have the resources to be able to shepherd us through this process. It would be helpful for me to know if during the working session, if I can get some feedback from my colleagues in terms of if it's not 20, what would be a reasonable line item? A place to start in terms of negotiating. And then the last thing that I'll say is that, you know, we're acting like we don't have power. And we do. The goal is for us to flex that power like we tried to last year. And if we keep going back to the mayor's not going to approve it, then let the mayor not approve it. Like, I don't understand why we just have to keep going back and just getting what we get and don't get upset. Like, if we want to be bold, let's be bold and let's fight for some of the things that we want, and let her and her administration figure out where they're going to get the money from. I just don't understand why we keep negotiating against our own selves here when we can ask for the things. I understand $75 million might be a little bit too much, but I don't think that we should be, you know, watering it down all that much, because then what? What does that say about us?
let's take a recollection of what took place last year. Last year, we actually proposed 56 million, and it was our first year with the process. The total was started at about 70 million, went down to 56 million. We did a process like this, and we cut it down to 27 million. When we proposed 27 million, the mayor found new monies and sent it back with only 17 million, and that's what passed, 17 million in amendments. And so this year, because a lot of us were not together in one room to go through that process and figure out what makes sense and what doesn't, I put every single one of it, just about the same amount that we started with last year, except I didn't go and chop it off and make that choice for you. I didn't make that decision for you. I put it on the floor. I was going to leave it to go to Mayor Wu. She would then chop it off and figure out what to say no to and what to say yes to. And so it's sort of the same thing that happened last year. There's no difference, except last year we were really present in the working sessions. Councilor Coletta, were you first?
I don't think so, but I'm happy to go. I think Councilor Murphy was ahead of me.
Councilor Murphy?
Okay, thank you so much. I think that it does make sense to maybe break and see what folks want to cut.
Okay, that's.
I do just want to
One
say
moment,
that.
please. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's about half an hour. Let's take a recess after you're done with your comment.
Thank you, and I will just echo Councilor Arroyo. There are some of us who had very modest proposals. I think mine only totals 1.2 or something like that. And so my amendments have come from a year's worth of work and hearings just to better understand exactly what my line items should look like and to fund some programming and personnel in the city of Boston. So I will just ask that folks who have put maybe double-digit million-dollar proposals on the table really take a look and append to their amendments. And I am willing to continue this conversation and just compromise. And I do appreciate the spirit of what Councilor Mejia was saying, that we all understand that we have to get to a place. We have to get to 7 tomorrow. And if we don't get to 7, then it goes back to the mayor's budget. And so we have to work together right now. And I think that that's very important. And I do think it's important that we go amendment by amendment to understand what will pass, because every individual part will be a part of this package that you're putting forth. And if some of us don't agree with what's in there, then some of us will vote no. So I do think it's important to go line by line. But for now, recessing and figuring out who's willing to cut. Thank you, Chair.
One quick before we break, and it's been touched upon a little, but just to get a ballpark, if we tried to come in at 17 million, that's 1.4 each, there's 12 of us, and everyone knows that there's a range. And not all of us can cut. If Council President Flynn cut, he'd have none, he only put forth one, right? And many people, just so the public knows, I mean, everything is political, and I know Councilor Lujan, you mentioned that a few of us signed on to others, so maybe one councilor is holding that money, but others also agree. So do you have, so when we do take a break, some ballpark number you would like all of us, or are you okay with it being a big range? I know that I've heard and listened to all of it, I know, and I do appreciate that you came forward this time to say, hey, I'm not saying no to any, and let the mayor decide, but we're in a place now where we're going to take a break and come back, because I'm very willing to cut, just not sure how much. I don't want to come back, and be the one who cut it all and then realize maybe. So if you, as the chair, kind of sending us off as, a good mom or teacher to let us know what you would expect us to come back with.
I disagree. I think it should go to the mayor, and I think the mayor should decide what the priorities are, and then I think it should come back. Not with you, I agree, I disagree with that notion
100%.
that we have to reduce it to a very small amount. Money is not like a tree. When you chop it off and you can't plant it, you can move it around, right? It's not something hard and fixed. And so if it goes to the mayor at $100 million, she can send it back to us with just $5 million recommendation. It doesn't matter. However, I understand that you're saying, all of you are saying, to come to a modest amount is how we will get to 7 votes, even though we had 8. No, what's on the floor is if we don't cut the police budget, we'll get to 7 votes and maybe more. That's what's on the floor. And then the other part is in terms of the break. I actually know exactly what the math is. I actually know how much. There's a handful of us here that I would say does. Councilor Lujan, Councilor Lara, myself, could really put together an amendment like that. And I know, because I look at their amendments, and I look at their numbers, and I know they've done their homework. I can tell that they know. So I actually know exactly what to keep, what not to keep, in order to get the vote tomorrow. I know that. It's not about me. It's about us together. And so I have to lead that way. And it's a challenging process, that's all. Councilor Flynn, and then we're going on recess?
Thank you, Madam
Councilor Flynn, and then Councilor Lujan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize for being out for several minutes. I had a meeting that I had to attend. so I know I missed some of it. I guess my question is, and I certainly can ask my colleagues on the break, but is there a kind of a ballpark figure that we all are trying to be reasonable about, that we're advocating, you know, $300,000 each in amendments, or $400,000 each in amendments? Are we trying to be reasonable, or are we trying to be all inclusive of all amendments in making it a wish list? Or are we also, or do we also understand that we are going into difficult financial economic times? And is that also a priority for us, is making sure that the interests of the city and its budget are protected? I just wanted to see what your thoughts might be, Madam Chair.
Council President Flynn, thank you for your question. I think your question is very similar to Councilor Murphy's, in that if I have a ballpark figure of what I think is safe, I do have a ballpark figure in my mind. And I know exactly what the numbers would look like, and I know exactly what departments, and they would be very modest, and we could get to 7, that's easy. That's not it though. It's about all of us having a voice and going through this process and hoping that I respect my colleagues enough to be able to vocalize their priorities. Councilor Lujan? All set? Councilor Mejia?
Yes, thank you. I'm just curious, Chair, if we're looking at the budget for allocation per resident, like looking at how much residents in Dorchester as opposed to other, is there any data about kind of like what that looks like, so that could help inform some of our thinking? I'm just curious, as we continue to move through this process, if we want to like come to some sort of agreement that is fair. I mean, I'm an at-large counselor. I represent 700,000 constituents. Everybody's my constituent, so this is just important for me to know. Like, if we were looking at per resident, how much is the mayor's budget spending on per district, if we're looking at it like that? Is there any data like that?
Unfortunately, because it's an operating budget, the services are supposed to be
For everybody?
executed citywide. So you can do per capita in a capital budget. To do a study like that, you'd have to go through tremendous surveying of responses. I did that with 311, remember?
Yep.
Almost a couple years ago. But even then, it's very difficult to actually make it super thorough. It wasn't as thorough as I wanted it to be, because it's only 311 calls. Can we say, is 20 minutes good for people? 15? No, he's all set. I don't want folks that are here, constituents that are here in the audience, to wait too long. Can we get a nod, or yes, 15 minutes? Good? Okay, we have recess. We're back in session. I wanted to thank the members of the public who are still here with us, and thank you to my counselors for bearing with us while we take that recess. And I wanted to just start straight to anyone who was willing to offer their, I guess, amendments or whether reduced or not. Again, I'm listening. I am taking notes for my final report for Wednesday. And then I guess also getting a consensus of whether or not we need the working session tomorrow. Councilor Lujan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wanted to start off by saying, again, I think when I was including in my total, I was including CAR 5. So I do see taking CAR 5 out, as Councilor Flaherty did, is reducing my overall amendment asks. Another one that I am removing only for the purposes of trying to show compromise here. We held a hearing on the Disaster Emergency Relief Fund. We had the City of Cambridge come. We see the work that the fire department does all the time, including yesterday in Cummins Highway and other areas. The importance for us to be able to help our residents who are experiencing trauma by having more coordinated services with both that engage both the private sector in helping our families get back on their feet. I think an FTE, a position devoted to helping with this private public disaster emergency fund is important and noble, but I am willing to shelve it for the moment and continue to discuss with the administration on this being a reality. So that $75,000 request I'm pulling in addition to the $1.2 million for CAR 5. And I just want to run through some of my other amendments. The first chunk, that total $661,868. So I want to go through that chunk. That chunk is for the municipal wage study. We've done a lot of work with the Office of People Operations there. That's for $50,000. $20,000 for, and that money is being pulled, $50,000 from the Finance Cabinet contractual. Again, we looked at every line item to see what was spent for FY23 and looked at FY24 projections. So I'm happy to go into more detail on my pulls, but just wanted to make that clear. $20,000 for a vital documents waiver pilot program, something that we brought up a lot with the Office of Returning Citizens, to help our residents who are returning home from incarceration have access to vital documents. $266,868 for contract services level funding for Moya. That's to put them on footing for their contract services they had last year. We are, as everyone is aware, seeing new arrivals. So it's important for us to make sure that—
Councilor Lujan, sorry, were you going through all of your amendments at this point or just the ones that you're retracting?
Whatever you just the ones that, okay. I'll just do the ones that I'm retracting. Sorry.
Yeah, let's just get through this.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Madam Councilor, sorry, I have to speak at a graduation, so I have to leave, but I am supportive of a lot of my, again, what my colleagues have put on the table. We just need to be careful when it comes to personnel around the city. That's all. Thank you.
Did you want to specify which departments? Only because I'm trying to see whether or not we need a working session tomorrow.
No, I think I'm all set. I think that there are places where we can look at, again, FY23 and see what the projections are for FY24, and there can be some cuts, but I just want us to be careful when we're making those decisions.
Thank you. I know you have to go. You sent me that notification previously. However, I just want everybody to know that once I put the report together, there was no way of me getting the report to you prior to Wednesday vote. The latest, the soonest I can get it is probably Wednesday first thing in the morning to allow you more time. But I noticed that my colleagues were making comments about like last minute report being on their desk, and it's not last minute, it's that literally that's how the budget goes, and I have to file it as soon as it's ready.
Councilor Fernandez, and I just wanted to just note that I put something else for consideration that I am opted to keep in here. It's $1 million for the Emergency Business Relief Fund for the Office of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion. I wavered about whether or not to take that off or to include. Ultimately, I want to keep that in. That is an intradepartmental amendment, so it would be $1 million from within Office of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion. We heard from the administration that those interdepartmental transfers are permissible. And the reason why I decided to keep it in is because we had a hearing, you chaired a hearing, and the OEOI seemed to like this idea. And so if they don't end up liking the idea, I think it's a really great idea for our businesses that are suffering and struggle for no fault of their own, especially our small businesses, our black and brown owned businesses. I'm thinking about the bridge closure in Hyde Park. Then they can make the decision to not include the $1 million, and that will be the signal to me. But I got a sense from OEOI that they like this idea, which is why I'll put it here as an amendment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, that's fully accurate. Thank you. And I will send a message to you. It sounds like we're wrapping it up today, but if we are scheduling, you're keeping that working session for tomorrow.
And the working session for tomorrow is on my calendar. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor President Flynn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to thank Councilor Flaherty and my colleagues for their advocacy, especially Councilor Flaherty, for their advocacy on CAR 5. And certainly this is about compromise and in working together and doing what's best for the city. And I want to acknowledge my colleagues for advocating for CAR 5. And I do understand that it might be out right now, but I would, and I think everyone worked in a collegiate, in a working relationship, but I would really like to add CAR 5 back in there. I think it's critical to the public safety and critical for the residents of Boston to have it in there. So I would like to advocate for it, and again, want to thank my colleagues on the council for their advocacy over that, not just this year, but over the last several years, really. And Council Flaherty has really done the work and working with our public safety professionals on this. But I would like to respectfully ask if we could add CAR 5 back into there, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Council President Flynn. I'm also a supporter of CAR 5, and haven't deleted it because we don't necessarily know how everybody stands on that. Thank you for expressing that. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
Yes, Madam Chair, I originally had in there a $290,000 for worker safety initiative under labor compliance and worker protection. Mm-hmm. I would like that to remain in there. But I would like to add one more, if I may, Madam Chair. And again, I understand the financial challenges we had, so I only want to add, or request, I should say, $25,000 to the Family Justice Center. This is part of the Boston Police Family Justice Center out in Alston and Brighton area. They work with domestic violence related issues, sexual assault, child abuse, human trafficking. I've been there several times with former Councilor Andrea Campbell. But I'm asking for the $25,000, Madam Chair, and I think the $25,000 would help them in terms of training, in going to conferences, staying on top of kind of cutting edge technology or information and dialogue that they need to do their job effectively. And that $25,000, or if that might be too much, maybe $20,000, but it would give them an opportunity to attend a couple of conferences, learn from some of their peers across the country on domestic violence, on sexual assaults, and how to work with immigrant communities. But I think $25,000 would be helpful to this Family Justice Center. And I was reviewing it, Madam Chair, and it looked like, initially it looked like it was under the BPD budget, but under further review, it might be also part of the City of Boston Public Health Commission. So I'm not entirely clear. It looks like it's actually under both, so I would probably need to get a little bit more information for you, but I'd like to at least make that request as well.
Okay. I did find it under BPD, and I was actually going to ask you, Council President Flynn, if you would recommend this to be an interdepartmental where you're saying you have money in contractual services already, BPD, can we prioritize this as a line item, and that's totally okay?
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilor?
And Madam Chair, I don't need to stay firm on that $25,000 figure. If it has to be something less, I understand, but it's whatever it is, it's more than that they currently have to do training, so I think even 20,000 would help them. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for your thoughtful amendments, Council President Flynn. Councilor Murphy? And I'm sorry, any councilor, of course, is free to go anytime to your, like whenever you feel like it, but you're free to go. We're going to wrap this up today, and I will notify everyone if we still need another working session, if we need to keep the one tomorrow. Thank you, Council President Flynn.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilor Murphy?
Thank you. I'm going to go out of order just because Council President Flynn, I had originally asked for an increase to the Family Justice Center for $500,000, and I was willing to cut it to $250, but thinking with Council President Flynn's ask, I would like to decrease my ask to $300,000. I don't want to take it out completely, but I think as a compromise, if we could just put in for $300,000, and that would include Council President Flynn's ask also. And I also thought, Council President Flynn, that it was the Boston Police Department. I know they do work closely with the Boston Public Health Commission, so that's where I originally was thinking we could pull it to put an increase to the Boston Police Department, but however, either department feels the best way to do that. And just one clarifying question, do we have to, are you taking notes enough now, or should we follow up after with our changes, or are you okay with us just talking them through here? Should we follow up after?
No, I like them to hear them now, especially because.
Oh, I'm definitely going to say them now. I'm just not sure if after I say them, if you would like me to also, or are you good with following through?
Especially because all of your polls are from Boston Public Health Commission, and we've heard from different people in community saying that probably is not a good place to pull funds from. Although there is another amendment that sort of counteracts your poll. And so if you start decreasing some of your amounts, it would probably.
Yeah, I'm going to start that right now, decreasing a lot, but definitely, yeah, absolutely. And not sure who in
Councilor
community.
Murphy, I'm going to ask you to allow me to finish my sentences, please. What I'm saying is that not only will it eventually average out, but because they're quasi-agency, Boston Public Health Commission, I mean, we're not able to tell them what to do or how to do it.
I understand, yeah.
Even intra, right?
Absolutely.
And so if you are pulling and someone else is adding, it sort of balances itself out.
And as we know, and especially as the chair of that Public Health Committee, it's more of a strong ask too. They work alongside our seniors, our veterans, our most vulnerable, so many of the departments I was asking them to add to could also, so me pulling them doesn't mean I think that we shouldn't continue to advocate for these things. I'm about to go through the list, but I do know, working closely with public health, making sure that they continue to fund and increase their support. The first one is programming. It was split into two. One is for our seniors and one is for our veterans. So it came out of the Age Strong for equipment, facilities, programming for physical and wellness opportunities. I had separated out, knowing that we have a lot of seniors who are housebound and through the pandemic suffering a lot of isolation in our BHA housing, which is a community, a population that we can really support. They're here with us, and also our community centers, increasing. I've been to many across the city senior centers that we're trying to increase our programming, and do think it's important that Boston Public Health supports that funding in a lot of these veteran and senior programming. So those two. Expand mental and emotional health services for our
Sorry,
seniors.
to what amount?
Just cutting both.
To what amount?
Well, I'm cutting the
Oh,
first
just
two.
completely deleting them?
I'm completely deleting them.
Okay.
Expanding mental and emotional health was also separated for seniors and veterans. One is to our Age Strong department, the second is to the vets. I do want to keep both of those. I know that our Boston Public Health works closely with them, but definitely keep those. Cutting the next two, the trauma-informed training, cutting support for parents with children with autism. I can work closely with I know that we could not touch any of the BPS budget, knowing that there is funding and support there, but when our children age out at 21 from our school system, making sure that there is still support for our families, I can advocate in other ways, so I'm cutting those two. But the two here, it's broken into two, but the recovery funding for businesses affected by community violence, OEOI, intra, so that's an intra, I do want to keep that one. And,
Got it.
yep,
Next one?
I'm not sure why it's broken down 3 times, but just keep one for $500,000 intra. Does that make sense with the 3 there? I'm not sure why it was written that way.
Depending on where it's coming from.
Yeah, so the next one I spoke of, about the Family Justice Center supporting those affected by domestic violence. Keeping it, but willing to decrease it from 500 to 300, including what Council President Flynn requested also. Officer Recovery Services, we can cut. I can work closely with Jen and others in the.
Sorry, did you agree on the amount that Council President Flynn suggested? The 50,000?
No, I had explained originally I was going to cut mine to 250, but I'm going to keep it at 300 so that if you want to combine the two, or if you want to keep them separate, you can keep mine at 250, put him at 50, but because I was already, and I'm not sure if he knew that I already had requested an amount for that, we could work together on that one.
Got it, thank you.
Cut recovery services, the life sciences is very similar to the one that Councilor Flaherty requested with the growth in life sciences. And I agree that we should put it through the fire department with inspectors, so you can cut that one from mine, because I agree with Councilor Flaherty on his. And want to keep the Boston Public Health for supporting the pilot program at the Harvard Street Neighborhood Distribution Program, which is a pilot. It's new, so I do think 300,000 is a modest ask to support that at the Harvard Street neighborhood, working alongside the community center also in the neighborhood association there for the food pantry. So keep that, please. And I think I just went through all mine. I'm good.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Councilor Barr, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I thought there were more people in front of me. So I think for me, the amendment for the Boston Public Health Commission asthma prevention, it was an original amendment for an additional 2 FTEs for cross-department capacity and management to help ISD and other city departments connect around asthma-related issues in housing. We talked about the response time. That I am willing to table only because I would like to have more, I initially already wanted to have more conversation with BPHC about what the 2 FTEs could actually accomplish.
It's just a suggestion anyway. Should I keep it as a suggestion?
No, it can be removed. Yep, for the BPHC as well. The, so that's one of them. the amendment for protecting at-risk cultural institutions, the increase for the space grant, I would like to lower that amount to 500,000. I think it's like 1.2 million or something, or maybe it might have been 1.9.
I have 1 million already on.
So I would like to reduce it to 500,000.
Would you like to reduce it at 500, even though I have a million proposing, or would you only agree to 500? Is the question.
I would reduce it to 500,000, and I will send you the updated funding sources. So, but I think 500,000 is enough. After having conversations with the chief and the director of Arts and Culture, this is basically, initially I had it going to the space grant at the Cabinet of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion, and we decided that would actually be easiest if we want to protect cultural institutions at risk to send it to the space grant at Arts and Culture. And based on their capacity and what they're going to be able to do, the $500,000 number is actually more in alignment with what would be helpful for them. That's one. And I have a amendment for the Mayor's Office of Housing that was initially at $7 million. I would like to bring that amendment down to $3.5 million, and I can send you the updated funding sources as well. So all in all, I am removing an amendment for the Boston Public Health Commission, lowering the $1 million request down to 500,000, and lowering the Mayor's Office of Housing request from 7 million to 3.5 million.
Councilor, I would ask that you submit your polls no later than today. It makes
I
it-
have them. I can share them with you.
You
right
have
now.
them already?
Yep, yep,
Great.
I can send it to you right
Great.
now. Mhm.
Awesome. Were there any other items that you'd like to address?
No, those three. That's pretty much all. It brings my amendments down to under 10 million. So I think I've made significant cuts from the 17 that was there before.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Councilor Mejia?
All right. So, yeah, I'm struggling a little bit, Chair Anderson, to be honest with you, because, you know, I really do appreciate the compromise, but I really don't want to set the stage that we're always going to be willing to just, I think that the mayor has an opportunity to really stand and, you know, she supported Yes on One. She was really a loud voice in participatory budget. And so we're all making a lot of compromises, which is what this work is all about. I would just like to continue to push through this process and consider lowering the amount from 20 to at least 8 to 10 million, with the understanding that my colleagues would be in support and find $1 million or $2 that they'd like to participate in helping us reach that goal so that we can meet the moment for community. I know in speaking to some of my colleagues, they've had some ideas of kind of like some earmarks that they'd like to particularly support as it relates to participatory budget. We do have some feedback from some spaces that we potentially can see some amendments, reallocating some resources to support this amendment. So I just wanted to go on record that I think that we want to push forward, and I am willing to go down from 20 to 8 to 10 million.
From 20 to 10?
Yeah. So just want to note that for the record. And then in regards to the mental health response pilot, you know, Councillor then Edwards and Wu and myself worked on developing the pilot, which was approved under Mayor Janey at the time. And from what I understand, there's 1.5 million already set aside. And so I am willing to reduce that, my 2.6 million ask to another 500. so that we can at least get to the 2.6 million.
1 second, Councilman here. Karishma, do we have it, is that the right number, 196? Is that the right item? Line 196? That's a different mental health initiative, okay. And so it's down to 500, not 1.1 million.
Not 2.6 million, which is what the initial ask was?
Sorry, no, I was, Councilman here, I was speaking with budget analyst.
Sorry.
She had corrected it. Sorry. My son's ringtone interrupts me, sorry. I had to reduce it to, because she put 1 million, I was just telling her it's not 1 million, it's 500, right? Okay. Got it. I'm sorry.
Direct response to?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Because the participatory budgeting amendment is for the $2.6 million is on my suggested, and I didn't cut it, and so I would ask that we don't. I think in addition to that, I want to second President Flynn's request to not remove CAR 5. I think the Boston Fire Department is getting the short end of the stick here. They had a decrease in their permanent employees, and the mayor in her initial budget cut their line item for permanent employees, whereas the Boston Police Department had unspent money as well in their permanent employees, and they received an increase in their permanent employee line items. And so I think all things being fair and equal, I don't think that CAR 5 should be on the chopping block. Just because of that, I think that the Boston Fire Department has taken some cuts this budget from the mayor's original budget, and so I would advocate for CAR 5 to stay, and I would also advocate to keep the 2.6 million, if possible.
For the crisis management?
Yes, because I have that as my amendment that I submitted, and I didn't cut it, so I would say, I would
So
want them.
could I just, for me, in terms of just clarity, I need, from what I understand from the administration, there is already $1.5 million to support this particular initiative, so I'm just asking for the funds that will help supplement and get us to the 2.6 million that it deserves. So I just want to be really clear in what I'm proposing here, and if the administration can confirm that there is already 1.5 million, right, then I just would like.
Right, so, I'm sorry, Councilman, may I? Did you say coño?
Yeah, because I always get cut off. I just say coño.
Hopefully that didn't translate. So, Councilman here, no, I made a mistake. When you said 500, I was talking to our budget analyst, Karishma. It is 1.1 to get us to 2.6, not 500. And I made a mistake to correct Karishma and say only put 500. So if Council Lara is saying 2.6, we're now, right? We're now 1.5 away.
Okay.
And but you are saying we're
what I'm
keeping
saying,
you at 1.1.
Yeah, okay. So so that we're all clear for the record.
To 2.6 total.
That's right.
So we want, exactly. So I'm not asking for 2.6. I'm asking to make sure that we get to that point. So
Understood.
if it's 1.1, then I'd like to advocate for that instead of 2.6.
Understood.
Right?
Thank you.
So does that make sense?
Yes, just to be clear, it doesn't take away from Council Lara remaining at her position of 2.6, although you're saying just the additional 1.1 to get to 2.6. Are you saying, yes, you agree only 1.1 to get to 2.6?
To get to 2.6.
Okay.
Correct, yes.
Got it.
So
Same amendment.
It's the same amendment. We're both advocating to fully fund this particular line item at 2.6 with the understanding that the administration already has 1 point something allocated towards it. So I'm only advocating for 1.1.
I understood that part. Thank you. Counselor Karishma. Karishma, do you mind going to Council Lara's list and just making sure that she doesn't have that 2.6 in there, and that you put Council Lara and Council Mejia's name together for the 1.1?
Yeah. And I also would like to go on the record in supporting of Councilor Flaherty's
CAR 5?
CAR 5. You heard that, Flaherty? I got your back there, kiddo.
Well, we love you. The firefighters back, not his. He
Well,
took it
you know,
back.
he's always out here advocating for them, so I just want.
We have the fire department back.
We got you, Flaherty. Okay?
All right.
There's a compromise here. And so I know 20 million sounds like a lot. I would love for people to recognize that, you know, there are going to be some push and pulls in regards to this number. I am open to my colleagues being able to help me understand kind of what are, you know, the list of resources or concerns that they have in the proposal, and drawing from some of the resources. I would like to know where they might feel comfortable drawing from. I think I need some more insight, because we know 67% of the voters passed participatory budgeting, and we should honor that. So I just would love to hear from my colleagues what their specific concerns are so that we can help address them. And I'd like to know what compromises they'd be willing to suggest. For example, using less from this resource or replacing them with another. Like, I really would love some specific feedback, and what compromises they are willing to make. What areas of the budget that our council colleagues are willing to reduce to create opportunities for other areas of work that are underfunded and need our attention. So I just really it'd be helpful for me to understand where my
Councilman
colleagues.
Mejia, I think you're at a much more modest place now, considering you've just reduced your asks by 11.4 million.
I got some more reductions too, just so everybody knows.
Okay.
Oh my God, Flaherty, I'm a quick learner. Listen, I listen. Y'all may not think so, but I do. All right, so here's some other things that I'm willing to compromise on. I spoke to my good colleague, Councilor Rorel, who has been doing a lot of work around civic engagement and organizing, and I'm willing to, some of the asks that I had for that department was around, I believe I had for the Office of Civic Organizing, $317,000. I am willing to reduce that. And the only thing the two things that I really would like to fight for and figure out is if we can have some funding to help cover costs for the poll workers. I asked for 117. Maybe we could cut that in half just for the first, no? Okay, thank you. I'd like to keep that.
I have some suggestions.
Okay, thank you very much. I love you for that. The Youth Action Network grant, I really would love to start investing in opportunities for young people to have access to dollars so that they can organize quality of life programming. So that could go under wherever Councilor Rorel says. If it's, you know, I can let that go.
It's an intra-departmental, it's a suggestion.
Yeah.
You can leave it there and then we can work on the policy together.
Okay, great. And then I know I asked for $750,000 for cannabis, but I am going to reduce it to only 500. Chantal, no. So let me just tell you, for the for the reduction, I really want to focus on supporting small businesses that have opened up shop and that are struggling. I've heard from several folks who, after opening up their businesses, are not getting the technical assistance that they need. So I'd like to kind of earmark some services for that, as well as figuring out how we can diversify the market. So it's not just about opening up shop, and maybe it's through a study or something, but I'm willing to cut that by 200,000 and just land at 500 instead of 750.
Wait, I'm sorry, which one is that?
It's the cannabis, and that's in Office of Opportunity and Inclusion.
Cannabis to open non-brick and mortar businesses? Oh, I never put it that amount. Did we have it at 750? No, I never suggested that. I actually cut it down for you.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I had already cut it down to 200.
Oh, damn, you cut
sorry.
it down to 200? I didn't see that here. Let me find out. I have to fight you too. Okay, no, I'm gonna have to increase it. Okay, I'm gonna go for
As long as
300.
when you say my name, you do gotta do the chorus like, Chantal.
Chair, can't believe you did that to me. I want that money back. Oh my God, I really literally did have 750 in my brain here, thinking that's what you,
There are just 3 suggestions that I suggest you strike.
okay,
The senior small business grants.
okay. What?
I think that we start off on working with the department to figure out where this goes
Yeah,
and make sure that the infrastructure is in place
yep.
and surveying,
Yeah.
especially with like that youth study for recreational space, senior centers. It could include entrepreneurial sort of recreational, whatever, trainings or workspace. And then the Youth Action Network Grant Program. Can you explain that a little bit more to me? Oh, no, that's interdepartmental, we're keeping that. And then the Healthy Food Pantry Program. It's a modest, very small, modest, but Office and Food, of Food Justice, I think, has enough money to do that, to execute.
That's fine. All right, so then let me just go on to my other must-haves, okay? Then I really do want at least 125 to support immigrant advancement work. And that is specifically for around programming and policy. This is more of a personnel line item, and this goes to support the hearing that Councilor Roel and Councilor Arroyo and I have filed to help support Latino and Caribbean immigrants. So that is at 125. So if I look at what my bottom line is, Karishma, that now that I have like slashed half my budget, I am only asking for 125 for immigrant advancement. According to the chair, 200,000 now for my cannabis industry work. I am going to collaborate with my colleague around civic engagement work, and that is specifically for the poll workers. I'm gonna dig my heels in on that one.
I would suggest striking the climate justice education for immigrant business owners.
Yep, the only thing for the immigrant, for OEOI that I'm gonna be fighting for, instead of, according to this, I had 750, you've slashed me down to 200, and I want that 200 to all be invested in cannabis,
Understood.
okay?
Yes.
And.
You have 2 that you haven't addressed.
Which two?
The startups, support small business, minorities, startups, contractual and OEOI. It's an interdepartmental, you do not have to strike it.
Yeah, I want that. That's interdepartmental, I'm not giving that up.
Also, the investigation tracking BRJP requirements,
I'm keeping that,
also intro, thank you.
okay? And then, I already made clear for the mental health response, I want to bring that up to the 2.6, whatever it takes to get us there. And then for PB, I'm willing to go from 20 to 10,
Yes, ma'am.
with the understanding that my colleagues are willing to give up a little bit of their money to help support what that looks like. And, yeah. How much am I now? I went from 27 million to a million?
No, 27 to like 25.
That's it? Oh, yeah, because.
I'm sorry, 15, 15,
15,
12 million down.
12 million down. But here's the deal. Yes, I'm fighting for the participatory budget, but that I see as a council, a community collaborative process. That's not just mine. Even though I am championing it, I am hopeful that my colleagues are all going to invest in that process, right? I just want to be clear. And if that's not where everybody's at, then I'd like for people to hear that too, because I want to manage everybody's expectations.
You've cut it down tremendously, and I don't necessarily agree again on reducing this amendment overall. I believe that again, out of $4.2 billion,
That's right.
the mayor can figure out, because she knows more about this budget, she knows more about the money that's coming that we don't know about. She knows, she has more handle on OBM and more resources to do analysis on a scale within 1 week, beyond what we have resources to do. Karishma's great, but she has an entire team. This is her budget, right? She put it together, so she would know, naturally, she would know more. So I think that it's fine for us to, to take Council Flaherty's point about reducing it. He makes it seem like 75 million is like too much considering $4.2 billion operating budget, but it's not. Especially because, again, historically, last year, the mayor we went from $56 million, we negotiated down to 27, she only ended up sending back 17 approved.
right.
And so it's only a first step. She's going to take it, she's gonna have more resources. She cannot go and make comments about how disingenuous removing money from overtime is. She can't make these comments because they're just not real. She can make the move back to where she wants them, and then it's up to us to take the process and amend items in whole or items in part, or again, we can do it as an omnibus vote on the floor.
Okay.
So I want people to be very clear that what comes in the Herald or Globe in terms of what the mayor is going to say or not going to say, I don't want people to feel intimidated that she's going to throw us under the bus and say things that makes us look inadequate in what we're doing. This is the process. If she inflates the budget in some ways or in departments that we are going to be more sensitive about removing the funds, then obviously we are looking into moving around monies, and then she can put it back and we can have that conversation back and forth. The difference between now and before the amendment process is that these deals and these back and forth and push and pulls used to happen behind the scenes without the public's information or input. And now it happens publicly, and the president named this African woman the chair of Ways and Means, the black woman, for the first time. And so then it became really transparent. And now the issue is then, who is willing to take a little cut from an inflated budget in the BPD and who is not? So I'm going to be very clear. It's just, it is what it is. In Africa, we say pong pong kish kish. It's bread, cheese, whatever it is, it's black and white. It's not, there's no confusion here. There's no discrepancy here. Everyone can get their amendment, but it's what you're willing to vote for. And so I appreciate you doing it this way. But again, as chair, my job is to sit, listen, and allow the group dynamics to fall into place.
And then I forgot to add one more, which is one that I spoke about earlier today. That wasn't on my list. That's why was an oversight on my behalf. Was the $500,000 for the reparations task force.
Yes, you did mention that. Karishma, you got that? Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Mejia. Sorry, Councilor Coletta or Councilor, who was first? Councilor Coletta, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted the opportunity to talk about my amendments. Being that it's at $1 million with some change, I think $36,000, I would like to keep a majority of them. And then talking about participatory budgeting, Councilor Mejia and I have had a conversation. I'm willing to go on record and talk about that. But just to go through everything and just to clarify some things based on the report of what we've received and what came through the committee report, line by line going through mine, the translation set equipment is coming from Public Works Department. And I think just in general for those folks listening, I'm trying to think about where I'm pulling from and be very intentional and mindful. My whole stick is to be very climate conscious. I would love to green our fleet. I would like to get to electric vehicles as much as possible. And so where I am largely pulling from is from auto energy supplies. So that is why I have, and anything to do with vehicles and equipment that emits carbon dioxide into the air. So I'll just be very frank and transparent about that. So for Public Works, this is $30,000 coming from the auto energy supplies, not from personnel. BCYF programming for youth, Office of Human Services, contracted services. We are increasing their personnel line item, so it's a little redundant to be contracting things out through HR when we're increasing personnel. We should bring that in, so that was my thought process there. Staffing for street work and sidewalk repair, coming from snow and winter management, our lease and debt purchases. 2 FTE Hokies, also coming from snow and winter management, lease and debt purchases. Upgrading the Kobuk system. I have here in the committee report that this was pulling from the police department, which is inaccurate. I would like to pull from the Public Works, again, Public Works supplies and materials, auto energy supplies, if we can clarify that for the record and the committee report. I also have here too that this didn't make it into the committee report, and I don't know if that was intentional or not, Chair, but 2 FTE parking enforcement officers for the Transportation Department. That was going to be intra-departmental, and it never made into the committee report, and I would like to keep it there and maybe think about pulling from the parking revolving fund. This is parking meters in the city of Boston. Women's advancement, supplies and materials, 4 machines, 4 menstrual products, not coming from Do It like this document says, but it's actually coming from Public Works, auto energy supplies, expanding the tree canopy, $50,000. It's coming from neighborhood services, contractual services. I don't know necessarily what that is. And then last but not least, Immigrants Lead Boston, pulling from not the police department, but Public Works, supplies and materials, auto energy supplies. I think in total that comes back to $1 million and change. Talking about participatory budgeting, I have been in conversations with the advocates, and I do agree that we need to, given the fact that we've just hired the director, we need to expand capacity and expand the director's capacity by empowering community organizations. And so I am in favor of, because I am just at, again, a modest 1 million, adding 500,000 to $1 million in to provide grants to community organizations to help with community outreach this next year. And I just want to go on the record too that I think that we should ramp up the spending for next year to 8 to 10 million, as Councilor Mejia mentioned. But I am willing to pull $1 million from anywhere. I think anything to do again with cars and our fleet is where I would prefer to pull this from. But I'm willing to negotiate that with you, Chair, or the administration. And I think just in general, I am still looking at the list that I created of personnel cuts, and I am still seeing quite a bit of them. There's almost $400,000 coming from the Transportation Department, permanent employees. There's still Public Works, permanent employees, $500,000. And so I'm just requesting that before we vote on anything, that we just get an updated report ahead of time so that we can look to see exactly where these personnel cuts are coming from. And I think that I would feel a lot better knowing what I'm voting on and ensuring that some of our city employees, they would be covered. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Councilor Coletta, the parking enforcement, as long as, just wanted to be clear that it's in the report as a recommendation because of getting into directing chiefs of departments in executive how to perform their duties is a violation of the code. So we have to just be careful with that. So it's in there, but it's in a recommendation. I didn't delete it.
Okay, thank you for the clarity on that.
Councilor Coletta, do you mind, sorry, one more time, just the changes that you made?
The change,
If there are any changes at all, can you?
yeah, so for this, pulling from the parking revolving fund, I don't know if that also would be considered an intra-departmental and therefore pulling it from the proposed recommendations.
You got it?
And then $1 million to PB to fund community capacity, grants to nonprofits.
You do have to make a recommendation where it's coming from. You don't have to do it right now.
Yeah, let me sit on that for a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, all set? Thank you. Councilor Worrell? Wait a second, how did we get to listening to y'all stuff and just cutting my time? See, these Jedi mind tricks. They're not gonna work for too long, Larry. Go on, Councilor
All right.
Rowe.
Well, thank you, Chair. And I'm just going to talk about the cuts and updates to descriptions that I would like to see in my amendments. So $50,000 in the BPHC Men's Mental Health Initiative. I'd like to cut that down to $200,000. I saw that, Councilor Mejia and myself also advocated for Office of Food Justice for $200,000, and per your recommendation, I'll remove that from my amendment as well. And then I want to update for civic organizing, the technical assistance for civic associations. Would love to work with Councilor Mejia on creating a description that kind of incorporates all of our ideas into one, and if that means increasing that budget a little bit more to reflect the need, we'd love to do so as well.
I agree. Councilor Rowe, you're saying it's an interdepartmental and you want to work in collaboration with councilors on it?
Right. Well, that's not interdepartmental. The Civic Association Tech Assistance, that's actually $300,000 coming from,
Oh,
yeah. That is coming from, I believe, BPD lease purchases. Let's double check.
yes,
Yep.
repair, so, equipment.
Oh, repairing equipment. All right. And would love to table the A-Strong evening drivers. That's interdepartmental, so I'm not even sure if that made it to the list, but if it did, we'd like to table that. And those are my changes and revisions to my amendments.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Rowe. Okay, Councilor Lara?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will wait to make my comments because they were in response to Councilor Coletta's comments, and she has stepped out, so I can speak after she returns.
Understood. Councilor Lara, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So a couple of things. One, there was one of the items that was coming from BCYF contracted on Councilor Coletta's list. I had a conversation with the chief about the money that was coming out of BCYF, particularly when I was having conversations about my amendments and where I was going to take money from. And although contractual services shows up as being underspent and there is an increase in permanent employees, contractual services are a part of the BCYF line item that the department uses to basically train their staff. And so as we are asking more of BCYF and as BCYF expands and they are doing a lot of work to basically serve the people of the city of Boston, I don't think it's smart to cut their contracted services. This is going to be the first year that that they're going to be able to kind of make decisions about where they're spending their money. And so that's one comment that I wanted to make. I don't think that BCYF can afford to lose any of the money for contracted services specifically. We've been doing a lot of work around swim and swim lessons, and they received a $500,000 increase to ensure that they were funding that. But overall, in the budget that the mayor gave us, BCYF actually received a budget cut. And so I don't think that we should be touching BCYF, so I wanted to just lift that up. I would like an answer to the ONS non-contractual contractual question, because I'm having like a spidey sense that that might be something to do with open streets, but I'm not sure. And then I just wanted to answer the question about unspent funds specifically.
Councilor, she was pulling from Office of Human Services, not from BCYF. Are you saying that although those contracts are to go to BCYF, that we should leave it to their discretion, or Office of Human Services?
Beautiful, thank you. So then that clarifies and answers my question. And then about the personnel, the unspent funds and personnel specifically, if I may.
There was a part about ONS that you mentioned. What was the actual program or line item?
Well, Councilor Coletta said that she doesn't know what ONS contractual is for, and neither do I. So if we could get just an answer from the administration about what that is. I don't know what it is either. So I just would like an answer from the administration about what ONS contractual is. And so when it comes to,
Councilor Lara, allow me to allow Councilor Coletta to respond
to,
to the ONS.
oh, so Councilor Coletta knows what ONS contractual is.
Yeah, so that line item was for $50,000 for expanding the tree canopy. That was $50,000 from neighborhood services, contractual services. And correct, I did say that I don't know where that's at. I agree that we should figure out where that's coming from, but I do want to keep the $50,000 for expanding our tree canopy and just funding trees across the city of Boston. I think if I made the other comment about BCYF,
That's not I'm not suggesting that we get rid of your amendment first, so that's fine, we can keep I just need to know what ONS contractual is. And the first comment about BCYF is not a real comment.
I didn't
because
say BCYF. I said another.
Yes, she corrected already, that's what I'm saying.
No,
That
I was saying, so permanent employees, BTD, $400,000. That's still, I didn't mention BCYF at all. I don't know why.
Councilor Coletta, you're misunderstanding what we're talking about. So when you said that you wanted to take money from contracted services, I misunderstood and thought that you said that we're going to take from BCYF contracted services. The chair corrected me and let me know that you were taking it from the Office of Human Resources.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Sorry. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay. The comment that I was going to
Councilor
make.
Coletta, is that?
Yes.
Councilor Lara, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the conversation particularly about the permanent employees and personnel that we've been having on the floor, and so similar to all of my colleagues, I do an incredible amount of work and an incredible amount of analysis about where the money is coming from before I make decisions about where to cut. Now, I don't actually know if any of the money that was just brought up about personnel is actually coming from my amendments. I just wanted to bring it up because in making my own decisions about where to cut, I have this analysis, and so I think that it's going to be helpful to help my council colleagues make decisions about where the spending goes. And so this is not in defense of any of my amendments, because I don't think that I don't take most money from permanent employees, but I wanted to just share this with the council for the record. So Public Works Department, particularly Transportation Department, and also Public Works emergency employees, Public Works permanent employees. And these are basically numbers on historic underspending. So for permanent employees for Public Works specifically, for FY22, their budget is at $22 million, and their actual or projected is anywhere from 16.6 to 17.4 million. And so historically, the Public Works Department has been underspending about $1.5 million. Right now, they're projected to underspend $4.65 million. And so for the public, I think it's important because we can, I think we often say that a budget is a value statement, but a budget is also a political statement. And oftentimes we make statements that are political, like, we want to make sure that we're protecting employees. But the reality is that none of these reductions are impacting any employees, right? Now, when I see an underspending, because I have managed a multi-million-dollar budget multiple times in my life as an executive director, I know that 1 year underspending does not mean we don't need the money, right? So that is why you look back and you look at historical underspending. And so in all of the places where there was money that was removed partially, not in full, for personnel or permanent employees, it was with the eye that the underspending had been historical for at least 3 to 5 years in these departments. Now, we know that BTD and Public Works are having a really difficult time hiring. And that is why a lot of the permanent employee line items are being underspent. That is the reality that we're in right now. A workforce of hundreds of people is not going to pop up overnight where we're going to be in a shortage in our budget. We're not going to have 150 people that we're going to be able to hire for the Boston Transportation Department or for the Public Works Department overnight, especially if we're predicting a $4.65 million underspending here. And so I say that because I'm a mother. And when I am budgeting my money in my home, I am not making decisions about buying my son a new pair of sneakers if the rent is late. We should not be making decisions about keeping a $4.6 million inflated budget when there is programming and resources that are necessary for the people of the city of Boston that need to be funded. And so again, this is not about any particular line item or money that's being taken. This is about, one, being honest and giving the public the information that they need. That when we're talking about using money from quote unquote permanent employees or emergency employees, they are, when we're talking about them here, this money is coming from unspent funds. And specifically, if other council colleagues put as much intention and attention as I did, it's coming from money that has been historically underspent, which means that the budgets have historically been overspent. And so that is particularly for Public Works Department. We have the same thing for the Transportation Department. They're talking about $3 million to $3.9 million in underspending just this year. Historically, same thing, anywhere from $1 to $2 million in underspending. And so when somebody's making a suggestion that out of $3.9 million, we move 400,000, you're not even taking all of the overspending. So if for some reason we did come up with 50 new employees to hire overnight, then the money that is underspent would still be there in an increase. I will also say that although I know that as counselors we have best intentions, I like to listen to the experts. And the Public Works Department came to the Boston City Council and gave us a presentation that said that they were only planning, between now and 2024, only planning on hiring an extra 10 people. And so why are we planning on giving departments money who have explicitly come here and told us that they are not going to spend it because this is what they can project they can hire? And so they came here, they're the experts, they know how to do their job, they gave us a number that they want to hire 10 people. We're looking at a $3.9 million underspending. They're only going to hire 10 people between now and next year. The money is there to be used to make sure that we're meeting the basic needs of the people in our city. So I just wanted to say that because I think that people tend to get very scandalous. And I want to make sure that we are grounded in facts and the actual budget numbers that we have here in the city. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you, Councilor. Councilor Coletta, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Councilor Lara, for clarifying that particular point when it comes to BCYF. And so looking at the numbers and being grounded in facts, I have all of your personnel polls. And so based on the things that you have already cut, let's just assume, so for example, construction of affordable homes with 50% vouchers. So let's just assume that that $3.5 million decrease comes only from personnel. You're right, you do pull from Public Works, Parks and Rec, Public Works, BTD, all of that is accounted for. And then also pulling from the arts and cultural space. I think you pulled $1 million out of that. That largely comes from BCY, or excuse me, that was the asthma connection. You have labor relations, OEOI, assessing, all being accounted for in that poll. But even besides that, the parking clerk, Office of Equity, ISD, Property Management, Law Department, that is $520,000 of permanent employee polls, with, the exception of an employment compensation of $15,000. So I think, yes, half of what you're saying is correct, but you're also pulling more from personnel than what you had just said. It's $520,000 worth of FTEs. And so if we want to be real and be clear here, there is some overspending in Public Works and Transportation Department. Yep, and then one of your line amendments, personnel, permanent employees, BTD, that's $400,000, 4 FTEs for maternal health programming. That's a noble and worthy cause, and that might come from overspending. But that still doesn't mean that this $520,000 is accounted for, given all of the things that you've already cut. And so I just wanted to put that on the record as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Coletta. So to just to clarify, Councilor also pulls from different departments. I'm not going to list them all here, but I have at least 6 additional departments that she pulled from, and that balances out. But I'd like to, because I haven't allowed Councilor Lara an opportunity to respond to what you just put on the floor, I will allow Councilor Lara to respond. I'm going to ask then that we move on after that. Councilor Lara?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like, again, to, for the record, because it sounds good when you say it, permanent employee reduction from ISD, $40,000. That's not even an EFT. That's not even one employee. Permanent employees for the parking clerk, $100,000, maybe 2 people. Again, unspent funds. These are not actual people. You can personify it all that you want. These are not actual people. We are not cutting parking clerks. This is $100,000 from the underspending in that line item. Now, again, Councilor Coletta, you can look at the report as it was submitted to the council, but just as there were line items that you had to make corrections to, I'm letting you know that there were line items that I will have to make corrections to. And so let's not take that as fact. So as you're looking at the committee report saying that I took money from X, Y, and Z, I'm looking at my amendments and I don't see that. So again, yes, there is money that's coming from taking $40,000 from ISD, that's not even one person. So, excuse me?
I'm sorry. Councilor Flaherty, I'm going to ask you for us to have one mic here. Councilor Coletta, did you, Councilor Lara, were you finished with your
I think what I
point?
would say is that since we've started this process, since last Wednesday, Councilor Coletta has not come to me once about any of my amendments. And so if Councilor Coletta has questions, then those questions should have been asked to me directly, either during the recess or between Wednesday and tomorrow. So I think that we can do that offline so that I can answer questions for Councilor Coletta, and I will make sure that you have the amendments as they are here for Wednesday's budget.
Once again, it was stated that there are some changes being made in terms of where the pools are coming from. And so I look forward to your updates. Councilor Coletta, I did hear you clarifying an amount, but I don't think there needs to be any more responses. Are you okay here? And so I think that we are going to, this is a healthy conversation. We should question and we should give feedback and we should continue with the process. But I think that the point to be reinstated here is that if you have that concern, if any councilors have concerns about unspent funds, Councilor Lara makes the same point that I've been trying to hammer in. We are not using any funds, for example, if a department used $3 million in personnel FY23, but we know that they need another 25%, I add that 25% to complete FY23. And then if I see that there's an additional $3 million unspent and they're saying I only want to hire 10 people, obviously, I mean, I think there was one department that was like $8 million surplus. And so at that point, of course, then I said, okay, reasonably and comfortably, how much funds do we leave in there for those FTEs? And after doing that, we then went through every single amendment and the negatives and the positives. If there was a deficit, we try to make sure that the math allowed the department to be comfortable, but also taking into consideration what they have advocated for in terms of building capacity. And so I'm going to ask each and one of you to come to myself and Karishma. If you go to Karishma individually, I'm afraid that your question might be isolated and it doesn't take the full picture into account. So I advise you to work with me, myself, the chair, so that I can give you the full picture, so you can see overall across the board how it's impacting each other's department. Outside of that, I think I will take the recommendations and suggestions. I will allow everyone to make their final closing statement. I will take your suggestions today. I am waiting for your final recommendation as to where the polls are coming from. The report, I'm putting the report together tomorrow morning. If we're not ready to present it in the working session, you'll have to understand that this stuff takes a lot of work. Hopefully I'm ready. We can come into working session just for about, hopefully, an hour or so, and I will present it, and at that point, move forward for a vote on Wednesday. Who had their mic on? Councilor Murphy? Your final statement?
Yep, not related to this budget, questioning the BPS budget. You pushed that vote last week. What will happen this Wednesday with the BPS budget?
That I postponed it. I postponed it.
Yeah, pushed it forward.
Oh, I'm
to this
sorry.
week, Yeah. I
Yeah.
said you pushed it off from last week's agenda, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not arguing semantics. English is my fourth language, and I sincerely didn't get that. Like, I thought you meant like I pushed it for it to be, is that frustrating for you?
No, I just asked
Oh.
what we're going to do when.
Allow me as a chair to continue. I'm saying I misunderstood the term pushing, as in like I pushed it for a vote. So I
No,
misunderstood.
absolutely
you.
not, no, pushed it from, yeah.
Council Murphy, are you being facetious?
Absolutely not.
Oh.
Just asked asked a straight question about the BPS budget vote.
Okay, I'm sorry if I'm slow in understanding you. So, I'm still considering it. I'm still trying to figure out where we are with BPS. I think that everyone has a right to vote the way they want to vote on the floor, and we'll find out what that is on Wednesday. Everyone will have a vote. Councillor Mejia, you have the floor.
So I know that we've been going back and forth on the whole BPD permanent employee situation. You know, the budget for BPD permanent employment for FY23 is $306.2 million and that is, or $839,000 per day. So the actual spending through 4/18 was $772,000 per day. And so assuming smooth spending, this would total $281.7 million, which is $24.5 million less than that budget. And so I'm just curious as we continue to talk about this, because I know we're struggling with where the money's going to come from. I just want to, make note of the fact that there is monies that have not been spent and that could be reallocated to support participatory budget. And then in regards to BTD, the BTD cuts its own internal budget for contractual services, and it will spend about $3.8 million out of the 7.6 million appropriated for FY23. So moving money from BTD contracts to participatory budgeting and other amendments still leaves us with a $3.9 million for FY24. And so the reason why I want to bring this up is because I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, and I just really want us to consider how we can get to a good place with participatory budget. I'm still hearing from folks, and you, the chair too, to keep it at 20. I'm willing to cut to 10. But I really do believe we need to come to some sort of agreement of where this money is going to come from so that my colleagues can feel comfortable and understanding that we also have a mandate. And that mandate is to fund participatory budget in a way that is going to not just satisfy the advocates, but also help us recognize our own power in fighting for the things that are going to help us bring literally the bacon home.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. From what I understand, you're asking us to share the responsibility in moving the funds for participatory budget. And I agree with you that there are discrepancies in terms of unspent funds with BPD. Councilor Coletta voiced her position that she wants to support 1 million move. That leaves you down to 9. I will support 1 million. Where it comes from, we'll still have to ask Councilor Coletta to respond so that we can justify the pull. I will support 1, so now you're down to 8. Are there any other councilors here who will support at least 1 or 2?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Initially, before Councilor Mejia took lead on moving the participatory budgeting amendment, I had $3.5 million, and I'm happy to look at the funding sources for the $3.5 million and see if we can move them there.
Understood. Thank you. Councilor Mejia, you're now down to 4.5.
Yeah, I think Councilor Worrell also was willing, but he's not here to speak for himself. But
If Councilor Wells,
I can shake him down for another $1 million.
I think that I look forward to hearing from all the councilors in terms of supporting your amendment. And then tomorrow, hopefully, we'll get at least a first draft ready to present to you guys in the working session in the afternoon, so we can be ready for Wednesday.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor President Flynn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to, well, first I want to say thank you to you, Madam Chair, for your leadership and the way you've conducted these meetings in a professional manner. I also want to say, and I think my colleagues might disagree with me, but on this aspect of the budget, if I think, I'm going to continue to review this proposal, but if I think that we're cutting funding from critical services and neighborhood services, it's something I could not support. As a district city councilor, I do everything I possibly can to bring services and programs into my district consistently. And if I think any services or programs will negatively impact my constituents, I could not support this, because as a district city councilor, unlike an at-large councilor, nothing against my at-large councilors, but as a district city councilor, the buck stops there. And we can't pass the buck and say, well, we don't have the services, we don't have the programs. Well, if you don't have the services and you don't have the programs, advocate for them, effectively advocate for them, and advocate for your constituents and your district. That's how I take my job as a district city councilor, that I do everything I possibly can to bring as much services and support into my district. And if I think one nickel is being cut that negatively impacts my district, it's something I couldn't support. But again, I'm going to go home tonight and review this thoroughly. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Council President Flynn. I think that you are genuinely a decent human being and a gentleman. I do think that I would recommend then, if you have any questions about discrepancies, I'm happy to show you the justifications and how folks here are saying or trying to prove that it's reasonable. Again, no budget is being reduced to personnel that, one, are already employed, two, to complete the fiscal year, FY23, three, to disallow department chiefs to hire or build capacity to what they've reported in the hearings. With that being said, I'm going to ask the rest of my colleagues. So I'm happy to take more questions from you, Councilor Flynn. I'll be available all night, whenever. Anyone else wanted to make a final statement? Okay. We're good? All right. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around and working this through with me, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Meeting adjourned.